Oh, we're live. Awesome. You know, this is. I hate the start of lives because I don't know where to put my hands. I don't know what to do with myself. We're just here waiting. No, but today we're doing Aquarius. This is gonna be really, really cool, and this is gonna be an adventure. So I'm doing Aquarius of BRAMstrology. So just waiting for him to join. What's up?
What's up? Hey.
Hey, you got the whole thing going.
Yeah, I was trying. I was like going through my closet. I was like, what can I wear that's really Aquarius? And I was like, there you go. That's what I got. So
I love it. I love it.
yeah.
Wait, yeah. So this is gonna be an Aquarius party for reals because between me and Brandon, we have both Aquarius moons. Both
Uh-huh.
Aquarius moons. I mean, just right there, you already know we're gonna fuck some shit up. Uh, what else? You have Saturn and Aquarius. What else? Just those two or more?
As for placements in Aquarius, yeah, just the moon and Saturn.
Okay.
But then I have Uranus conjunct my North Node and my
Yeah.
ascendant. Yeah, there's that. Just casually. And then 11th house stellium of the Sun, Mars, and Pluto. So
Yes. So I have an 11th house stellium too, and I include my node in there. My North node is in there too. Uh, Uranus is in my first, conjunct
Oh yeah.
Neptune. So I'm like right there with you. But yours is deeper. Yours is cooler because yours is conjunct your ascendant.
Yeah, it's great.
And I've got Aquarius Mercury. So it's just like, the whole evolutionary Aquarius paradigm going.
Yeah,
So
pretty much. I mean, we don't have the Aquarius Mars and we don't have the Aquarius Sun, but other than that, I think we have an Aquarius Venus. But so we don't really have those. But other than that, we got pretty much everything else.
yeah, it'll work.
It'll work. It'll do. It'll do. Your Uranus is pretty strong, so it'll come through.
Yeah.
So, okay, I really want to talk about, it was funny because I was thinking about, before we got on this, I was like, because I remembered you had an Aquarius Mercury, and I was like, I wanted to talk about that for a second because I think it's really cool. But it was funny because I was on your page, and I was seeing how kind of the order of the videos are kind of in this like random order, but they're gonna get done. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was just funny, and I was like, that's very Aquarius Mercury to have it like be kind of random, but still in some sort of form. And I think that's really cool. And I just want to hear about your Aquarius Mercury like life because I think it's super cool.
Should we start with that?
Sure. I mean, I think that's a good. I think that's a good place to start. Yeah.
Yeah. Why not? Honestly, so the thing is, and I'm sure you can kind of vibe with this. I don't know. I have a conjunction with my moon too. So my moon, Mercury, they go together. I don't know. I don't know how I'm gonna feel like within 5 minutes. Like I could be great, or I could be like cool, calm, and collected. And like I have crazy insights that I just can't predict. So I've given up on trying to figure out this Aquarius thing. I just let it do its thing, and then I'm just like along for the ride. So what are you gonna
Yeah.
do?
And I feel like that plays into your Aquarius moon anyway too. And of course, we're probably going to talk about that a lot because we both share that.
Mhm.
And I think it's like conjunct, like exactly conjunct, or pretty closely conjunct.
It's like it's 8 degrees away. I mean, it's like a wide conjunction.
Oh yeah, but it's still in the same sign. So yeah.
It's the moon. If it was like Mercury and Venus, and I would be like, that's like pretty well. It's the moon, so it's still connected.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It's in the same house. It's in the same sign, so it's good. And I can feel it too. Like whatever I'm feeling, I'm thinking. Whatever I'm thinking, I'm feeling. It's like it just goes.
Oh yeah, 100%. When there's that connection there, and I think that's why Mercury with that moon actually helps a lot because it's like it's nice, like it's like right there, like at the forefront, like you know what you're feeling, you know how to explain it, even though it's weird and it's kind of random, you still can still follow it with your mind, you know, with that Mercury, and I think that's really cool. But yeah, and that moon in Aquarius, I mean,
Yeah, see, you know, it's like it does what it wants to do. It does what it wants to do, and we
yeah,
don't like like I don't know. Later today, I don't know how I'm gonna be feeling. Like I don't know.
mm-hmm.
Like if you have Taurus moon, like you generally have like an even kill disposition. You know what I mean? You're like, I don't like this all the time. And it's like, that's nice. I mean, it gets kind of boring, but yeah. But,
Yeah.
no,
And that's where I think. Oh, go ahead.
no, I was just saying, I mean, I love my moon, so I
do
good.
too. I do
Yes.
too. It's one of my favorite placements. Like that Aquarius moon energy. It's so like, yeah, it's detached and it's cold and it's different and it's like not really normal for people and they're kind of like, where's the warmth? But then it's like, you know, when it comes to people, like humanity and like actual people, like just the collective of people, we like really genuinely love them. And it's like we have this emotional connection to just people. And like I've literally just like cried because of homeless people before. And like I've had these moments of just like a lot of like legitimate humanitarian moments where I've like been really connected to like just humanity. And I've always looked at people as like, you know, they're equal no matter where they're at in like the hierarchy of things. Because I think Aquarius moons, we know that like lives of humanity and just our own lives in general can just kind of change on a dime because of that Uranian energy. So we know that like people can kind of have those same moments too, where they're suddenly a CEO and then they're suddenly, you know, a janitor or whatever it may be, or vice versa. And it's like treating everyone with respect, no matter where they're at in their life as a human, you know, because they're still human and they still deserve that respect. So that's just my Aquarius moon portion on that.
No, I love it. I love it. See, mine is a little bit darker. My moon is a little dark because
Not the Scorpio North Node, never.
oh yeah, all my Aquarius stuff is squaring my Scorpio stuff. So
Same.
it's like, yeah, so it's kind of like it's like I wanna do something to help the collective, but I also hate all of you at the same time. It's like it's that real, you know. It's like
Yeah.
you know, some days you're just like, oh, I've tried, I've been trying, but you people are, you know, what I mean, it's like not like a personal thing. It's just like a collective. Yeah. It's just like, oh, it's like you guys are never going to change. Like, like the darkness blending with, and it's like Aquarius, like that innate war, and we haven't even gotten to that yet. The whole Saturn Uranus thing. It's like it is like a eternal war. It's but it's also external too because it's like, you know, well, like how do you work with Saturn and Uranus with Aquarius? Because then I'll piggyback off of you.
So you mean in relation to like the Saturn Uranus story, or just like what do you mean?
I mean, in terms of I guess rulership, or like how do you?
Oh yeah. So I mean, I tend to use traditional rulership for the most part, but when it comes to Aquarius in general, I feel the need to talk about Uranus. Obviously, Uranus is really much more prominent in my. Well, it's kind of both. I have both Saturn and Uranus in my chart because I have Capricorn, and you know Capricorn rising. You know Uranus and Capricorn.
Too, so I think we're both Capricorn risings too. So
yeah, exactly. Yeah. So we have this really cool Aquarius second house. But anywho, point is, Uranus, I kind of look at them as both. I kind of hold both modern and traditional and both things depending on where I'm kind of at in consultations with clients or what I'm feeling. For the most part, Uranus, I mean, there's so much to talk about with Uranus as it relates to like the higher octave of Mercury and the whole kind of trauma signature and the whole collective consciousness sort of thing. And there's so many things in that. So I tend to try and keep it more on the Uranus side. And then when I'm like, okay, look at all this fractaling, this breaking that happens with Uranus and Aquarius energy. But then there's still that Saturn that's like, I want to have something to make sense of it. I want to have something to kind of like ground it, right? And so the Uranus will kind of come in first, break everything like a lightning bolt, but then you'll have to kind of really build from that and be like, okay, this is now this is now changed. Now how can I make this work? And that's where Saturn and Aquarius, which we're all in right now, is something we're all learning. But it's Aquarius energy in general has that duality of like what is the future that we don't quite know yet, and then what is like where are we currently, and kind of like bringing those two together. And it's really cool. I obviously love Aquarius energy.
Yeah, so. Yeah, no, I love that. I love how you're working with that too. I like with my friends, I always tell my friends, and we're just talking astrology, and I'm like, I think it's an insult to Aquarius to say that Aquarius is ruled by Saturn.
Yeah, I would say so too. Yeah.
Like, I mean, it's like half joking, but like not really. You know what I mean? To where it's, out of all the signs, and Aries can kind of go in that same circle. But for such an outcast sign of like, I want to do my own thing and I want to revolutionize and I kind of want to go my own path. It's like to sit there and say, and this is not a debate. This is like, you know what I mean? Like, this is just like my own thing. You know? And Aquarius, like, well, Saturn and Capricorn, 100%. Saturn rules Capricorn. Like, it like says, I'm honored for you to rule me. Like that's Capricorn. And Aquarius, like, no, I refuse to allow you to rule me. You know what I mean? And so like that, but then it's like, but I also look at it in a sense of you can't just have Uranus, because Uranus is just going to be blowing shit up eventually, like a rebel without a cause. We do need to bring Saturn with Aquarius because it stabilizes, like, I am a rebel, but I have a cause.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? So you do need both. It's just a matter of like which one is trying to dominate the other. Because
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly, and it's a really big kind of like war between those two energies, and having any like planet or any sort of constellation that has dual rulership, like Scorpio or Aquarius or Pisces, there is that kind of back and forth just between working with those two energies a lot. And so with Aquarius, I find that it's a lot of like kind of like I said before, where it's this kind of breaking apart of things and then kind of coming back together. And like you said, like a whole rebel without a cause thing, because Aquarius need that freedom, but then Saturn's like, no, you can't be quite free. Like you need to kind of work with the confines of time, work with the confines of like the limits and things. And Uranus definitely works outside of that, because Uranus is like the first planetary body outside of Saturn, so it's outside of Saturn's control. So it's kind of like this like rebellious teenager that's like, I can do whatever the fuck I want because Dad's not watching me, and I can go wherever I want. And of course it's gonna fuck shit up. It's gonna go crazy because it's never had freedom like that before. And so Aquarius is kind of in that in between where Saturn is still ruling it traditionally, so there's still that kind of reigns there, but it does need to have like its own freedom, and that's why Uranus and Aquarius is different, because it works outside of the time that Daddy Saturn's able to kind of see, so it really fucks with Saturn a lot, but Saturn's still there like, hey, you have to listen to me. You know what I mean?
I one of my favorite things to like kind of bring in to kind of explain how I view Aquarius in relation to Saturn and Uranus is for any Game of Thrones fans out there, I use a lot of Game of Thrones references. So like,
I've noticed.
It works.
Yeah.
I mean, I got the schedule right here. So like, So like Jon Snow, like I like to say, if Jon Snow, he's a part of the Night's Watch, and he's venturing out, and he's like, he went beyond the wall. Okay. Aquarius, Uranus, going beyond the wall, Uranus, and he comes back, and he's like, I've seen the White Walkers, I've seen this, I've seen that. And the rest of the Night's Watch, they're like, no, they don't exist. Like he's out of his mind, crazy. He's lost it.
Yeah.
Back inside the wall, they're like, we've never seen that, so he's crazy. Because they've never been on the other side of the wall, and that's if we start talking ruling Aquarius, and we just like forget about Uranus, because before Uranus was discovered, it was just Saturn. So it's like we only have Saturn to deal with. So let's say for right now, like, Saturn is just like the complete ruler of Aquarius. Oh, did you want me to repeat that or?
No, you're good. No, you're good. I
Oh,
heard you. You're good.
like so we have social Saturn with air. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? Like air sign ruled by Saturn, and we have an Earth sign ruled by Saturn, and then the Earth in the confines. Like you know what I mean? Like it's been tested. We've seen this before. And then we have air Saturn. It's like I kind of ventured out. I went further than you.
Yeah.
And then Earth Saturn is kind of like this is not making sense. Like what I
Yeah.
mean? Like there's no. You're talking about White Walkers. What are you talking about?
Yeah. Yeah.
And that is when I think the Uranian comes through because of the it's like being social Saturn, being an air sign ruled by Saturn. It's a natural contradiction. It's not gonna work. I've concluded like this does not work. You put those two together, it results in like rejection, trauma, this and that, and bringing the Uranian energy, and it's like, oh, hey, I vibe with that. This is me. Awareness kind of happened by happenstance. It's like it's the result of rejection, and it's the result of like not feeling like people believe me, like people think I'm crazy, people think I'm delusional, all that stuff. And so that's how I kind of conceptualize the whole Aquarian journey of like I started here and I went through all this shit and they didn't accept me, they didn't believe me, this and that. So you know what? Uranus, I found Uranus on the other side of the wall, and I don't want to go back.
Exactly. Yeah, and it's like, and I'm glad you said that. I mean, first of all, I don't watch Game of Thrones, but I understood your reference because it makes sense with the way you explained it. So that's awesome. And I think it's really cool to talk about that whole Saturn ruling Aquarius versus Uranus ruling Aquarius thing. And of course, we're going to talk about that quite a lot in this because it's just natural. And I think that with Saturn, I mean, I'm a natal Saturn Aquarius, so I've dealt with it my whole life. And it's this energy of very much feeling like you don't belong to a group or a cause or the right group or your right identity, right? Because Aquarius is opposite that Leo archetype, so it's opposite the who am I, and it's more of the who do I belong to, or what is my, how can I be a part of something and provide myself, provide my identity. So there's a lot of Aquarius as relates to the Saturn part tends to get over-identified with the cause, over-identified with the group, and doesn't see that their own part of the story, their own like Uranian individuality, right, is part of that whole group, right? There's a lot of the Saturn Aquarius that like we get so bogged down on like labels and figuring out what we are, what we're not, and like the whole compartmentalization of like ourselves, and that's why astrology, like part of astrology, rules Aquarius because it rules that sort of that way that we're able to say, okay, you are a Pisces sun, Aquarius moon, Capricorn rising. I am a Scorpio sun, Aquarius moon, Capricorn rising. And we're able to kind of compartmentalize and see where we fit. And it's a matter of, with Saturn being Aquarius, it's a matter of putting those things together and seeing the purpose of being in a group and purpose of being together and how we're the same, and not the Uranian part, which is how we're different and using it to like shun and like neglect intimacy and like not get closer to people, but try and find common ground with your fellow man. A lot of it. So that's just my little take on that.
No, that was great, and I want to like kind of bounce off of the Aquarian. It's like every time we like anything we say about Aquarius, it's like it's just contradictions everywhere. It's like I want this, but I also want that, and it's like they don't go together. You know what I mean? Like so, in Aquarius, it's like Aquarius will be a friend to everybody, but at the end of the day, I'm the biggest loner. You know what I mean? Like, like I want to be social. I want to be connected to everybody, the world. Like society, like my environment. I want to be a part, but I know that ultimately I'm a little. I'm not like everybody else. So, like it's like one of those things. Like Aquarius is like kind of detached. So it's like I'm too cool to talk about that. I'm too cool to talk about my feelings. And I've seen it. I've seen it so many times. Like I've had my brother, he's an Aquarius. Like he's like He's in the Aquarius, and he's in that generation of Saturn Uranus conjunction. So he was born in '88.
Oh, okay. Capricorn, yeah.
Aquarius, and he's got that conjunction, so it's like he's just like rebelling against everything all the time. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So,
Yeah.
and it's just like I've seen him like throughout his life, like have all these friends and be in all these groups, but I've also seen him in his private time, and I'm like,
Mhm.
you don't even act like that when you're around your friends. You know what I mean? Like you
Exactly.
don't show them that weirdo. You know, like he likes
Exactly.
like he likes riding horses and stuff, but like when he's with his friends, he doesn't talk about that. You know what I mean? He doesn't talk about like the
Exactly.
cowboy stuff. You know what I mean? It's like total
Yeah.
Aquarius.
Because
And
it's the social rejection part of it. It's the being rejected for who you want to be or who you want to see that you are or whatever. And it's hard because I think as Aquarius placements we really want to be a part of a group, but we reckon and the image that comes to mind is like those TikToks where it's like, oh, I showed personality 37 to my group like 39 or whatever, right? Like I like that whole like compartmentalization of who you're showing or what face you're showing or what type of personality you're bringing out. It's a lot of that Aquarius energy of like not wanting to be rejected. And Aquarius rules that whole like when you're a part of a community and then you're different, you know, that's when you're rejected and shunned from the from the tribe. That's why traditionally, or that's why some people like come to the thought that Aquarius rules like LGBT and the whole like those sorts of communities, like off the fringe, because they're those communities and they're those things that if you're identified with, you get rejected for, or you potentially could get rejected for by your family, by your specific root. Because when you think about Aquarius is in conjunct to Cancer, to the moon. The moon and Aquarius they're not a vibe. So it's like this really, if I'm myself, am I going to be rejected? If I'm too much of myself or I share too much of myself, am I going to be accepted or rejected? And that's where the Saturn Aquarius, we're all kind of figuring that out. How to be accepted for who we are, and all our intricacies and the differences that we have. So I think it's awesome.
yeah, it's commendable too, because it's like Aquarius is just so different. So it's different. Like when I'm looking at Aquarius in a chart, like in a birth chart, it's my strategy is completely different than any other sign, just because of what we're working with Saturn and Uranus.
Mm-hmm.
And I know sometimes in certain sectors of astrology, we're taught or to just look to that sign. You know what I mean? Like, I'm sorry, look to that planet when you're working with a certain sign, and
Mm-hmm.
then create based off of that. Well, we got the dualism there. So I'm looking at Saturn and I'm looking at Uranus, but I'm looking at them in totally different facets.
Yep. Exactly.
The conditioning and how are we how are we being restricted from being our authentic self? Aquarius falls on that axis of individuation, being
Mm-hmm.
our true self, with
Yep.
Leo. There's a
Yep.
reason why Leo is like, see, Leo is it has the luxury of not having any dualism. It's like
Yeah.
it's like I'm the sun, I'm fixed, like I'm right here all the time. Like I don't have to work with Saturn. Like Aquarius always has to like be in some relation to Saturn, and it wears on that sign.
Yeah.
I think it wears on Aquarius because I would like to just be Aquarius. I mean, I would like to be Uranian for a whole weekend without Saturn. Not happening.
Yeah.
Not happening.
Yeah.
No. So
Yeah, being Uranian is a little rough because essentially it's this energy of like really big downloads that come out of nowhere and change your life and just pull you in different directions. And I was literally born on it, so like it's like such a prominent energy in my life where I was literally born like it's like 4 arc minutes apart, so it's like 1104 and 1108, like that's the difference between the North Node and Uranus in my chart. Yeah. So it's like really strong. And so it's been something that Uranus is kind of like that insight, that kind of like random spark of whatever, and you're like, I need to follow this. I don't know why, but I need to follow this. It just makes sense, and I need to just follow this image that came to me, or this sort of thought that came to me that just makes sense, you know. And that's where Uranus and the Aquarius part kind of, it's hard because when you put Uranus so heavy in a chart, it makes it so that you have to follow those insights. You have to follow those random things, even if you don't know why, right? And I've had to do that just in the nature of my own chart, but there's a purpose in that. Uranus and Aquarius has a purpose in what it's doing and the direction it's bringing you. And once again, it's not going to make sense because it's not within the confines of Saturn's, of like Saturnian time. But if you keep following that mental impulse, that like higher mind, that kind of like, okay, why am I thinking this, or why am I understanding this, or why is this coming to me? You follow that long enough, eventually the pieces will kind of come together, and you'll know why you had to go through this, or this. You know?
Yeah.
So.
And also, like, I think, I think Saturn is there for a reason with Aquarius. Like, so I've gone through the whole, like, completely using Uranus and disregarding Saturn. I've gone through that, and then like bringing back in Saturn, and then questioning that, and all of that stuff. And ultimately, I've just come to the conclusion that, like, no, Aquarius needs Saturn, needs it. Like, because without Saturn, you can't have Uranus. And that's what I was saying earlier in terms of like, it's like Uranus is the byproduct of Saturn's, like, and how I relate to the status quo, how I relate to how everything has been. And it's like you were saying, like, following that carrot on a stick, basically, of like, I'm going this way. I don't, it's hard to trust it because like most people don't go that way. And that's honest. It's like, oh, that's my journey. I'm going to be weird. I'm going to be different. I'm going to get a lot of rejection. Like, and that's the thing I think a lot of Aquarians, like, we need to talk about is the rejection aspect of it's inevitable. It's inevitable. Like, you're going to be rejected from day one, having any like prominent Aquarius placements, Uranus aspects. Like, it's inevitable because different and what isn't the consensus. People are going to be like, you're crazy. This isn't working. Like, it's not going to work. But it's like, down the line, people are gonna be like, remember when? Remember we thought that the Earth was the center of.
Oh yeah, yeah.
It's just like that.
And that's I think where with Saturn, I think it's really important to, because there is that aspect of time of remembering and looking back and saying, look at where we were before and where we are now. And I think with Saturn and Uranus both ruling Aquarius, it's like this aspect of like, what if I don't know the limits, if I don't know the walls, if I don't know the boundaries, I can't grow, like I can't push past that because I don't know what the limits are. So if there were no rules, there were no laws, and it was just Uranus, it would be chaotic because it would be chaotic, but also could potentially be great because it's going to be chaotic and random and it's not going to have any form. But then everyone will have their own sense of own autonomy and freedom, which is its own Uranian part. So there's two sides to it, like everything with Aquarius. But I think if we know the form, we know the laws, we know the walls and what we're working with, we can inch outside of that or break outside of that and have that rebellious thing. But if we don't have those walls telling us, hey, you can't do this, then we're not going to have any rules to break. And then we're just going to be like, we're not going to have any real direction or real room for mental growth because we're not going to push past any boundaries, So it's
that's and it's taken me a while to kind of get that gist. You know what I mean? In terms of just like it's not cool to just be like, I'm just different just so I can be different. Like that's not really like it's very. It's like, oh, you're just looking to be seen. You know what I mean? You're just looking for, but it's like, if I'm being different because I have a reason to be different, or this is just naturally me, and I'm attuned to this like frequency and I want to keep it, that's different, because you have the conscious understanding, Saturn. If you're just Uranian and you're just fucking, like, it's gonna sound kind of harsh, but like it goes with it. Like sometimes it's the same guy. I don't know who it is, but apparently he's a friend now. But like I keep my window open at night, and like there's this I mean, I think he's a homeless or whatever, but like
Oh, okay.
he like makes sound like it's every night. He's like just walking down, and I'm up at like 3 a.m. in the morning all the time anyway. So like I'm up with everybody else. So what does that say about me? But
Right.
but he's super Uranian. He's like I'm just like is that a human or like what like is that a cat? Like what's that
Uh-huh.
sound? You know
Yeah.
what I mean? But like
Yeah.
yeah, like it's I kind of lost where I was going with that.
And
Something
it's with the aspect of like with Uranus kind of ruling the consciousness and random like I was getting that you were kind of like looking at it with the different like streams of consciousness that might go into someone's body that makes them seem like they're not human, that sort of
oh,
thing, and or the friendship part of it. It might have been that too.
oh no, not that, but I was going with like yeah, if we're totally Uranian, that's where if we're totally Uranian, then we're just kind of like we're completely on the fringe of society.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Like
Yep.
if we're just completely
That's
on the
debatable.
fringe, yeah, if we're just completely on the fringe of society, then uh, like we're not a part of society. We always need to be a part of society so that we can change it or we can have an
Yep.
impact. And that's
Yep.
Saturn. You know, if it's just completely you're honest, then it's like, yeah,
Mhm.
we're just kind of like we're being weird, but it's like it doesn't matter. You know, if we're just being weird and we're
It's
just
not
being
getting through to
different.
anybody. That's the point. It's not getting through to anybody. If it's too
Yeah,
Uranian and there's no form with it, and you're just like a homeless person meowing like a cat outside someone's window, it's not gonna get through.
that's my point. Yeah, that was my. I lost it for a bit, but then I was like,
I
okay,
got you.
it came back.
I got you. And I think another part of that too is it's interesting because that brings up this aspect of the Uranian shock factor, where like in that example, if someone were to come to you and this homeless person were to meow like a cat, right? That would be really really fucking weird. But it's also something that it makes you as a human think and be like, how did they whenever you see a homeless person or someone that's having a psychotic break or someone that's in a deep mental like disconnect, you have this moment where you're like, how is that possible? Why is that possible? How is that happening? And that's the Uranian mental part of it, where it's the higher octave of Mercury, where it's trying to teach you something. And that's where like the whole like angel numbers and synchronicities and all of those things come into play, because that's like, it's a whole fractaling of the universe and the matrix, all that crazy shit that Uranus rules. But it's those little things that come through you in the system that we're in this multi-dimensional, pretty much just giant geometric pattern that we're living in, and Uranus comes in to try and be like, hey, wake up, like there's more to this, there's more kind of going on. And I think Aquarius has a lot to do with that. And that's where there's social rights with that, and that's where there's humanitarian things, because it's like there's more to this story than just what you in your reality, what there's more humans out there that are capable of different things or doing different things.
Yeah,
So
no, amazing. I love that you touched on that because like that's like a great segue in terms of like integrating and that's I feel like Libra and Aquarius like having that trine of being air signs and they work together in that way where it's like the social issues. You know what I mean? Like when they channel their energies in the right
yeah.
direction, it's working on the behalf of society. And it's
Yep.
funny how you got two air signs and okay, traditionally we say one is ruled by Saturn and the other one is exalted,
That's what I was gonna say. Yeah.
right? And it's like again, I have my whole spiel of like right now we have Saturn and Aquarius. How is it in its home? I mean, like look around, it's like the whole social restrictions thing is out of control. It doesn't help that Pluto in Capricorn. It doesn't help. But is Saturn really in its home in Aquarius? Because people are suffering just simply because of these social restrictions. You know, that's a whole thing. That's a whole
Yeah.
spiel
Yeah.
backing up. But again, coming back to like the Libra and Aquarius and like how they can kind of connect with that. I wanna provide like I want to provide equality for people in the world and like to where people are segregated against. There's like an imbalance of right and wrong in society. You know, and I often think of signs in relation to society and their how they work, you know, in society.
Yeah. And I think with both Saturn and Libra and Saturn and Aquarius, you have to think of their opposite, which is Leo and Aries, which is where the sun is exalted and how we know who we truly are and what we can do. And so when you put Saturn in Libra or Saturn in Aquarius, it's like, okay, I know who I am, and now I'm learning really about the other person in Libra, or in the bigger picture, I guess, in Aquarius, or the humanitarian part of it. And it's really something that there's a reason why it's exalted and, you know, comfortable in those spots, because it's opposite placements that are really healthy, right? The Leo Sun and the Leo Aries, right? Or the Sun in Aries. And it's this like, we know what the boundaries are. We know what the limits are with other people, because we come from the Aries that knows who I am, or the Leo that knows how I want to show up or who I want to be, you know. And it's really good. Saturn and Libra and Saturn and Aquarius are both their own really. Obviously, I'm kind of biased with Saturn and Aquarius myself, but the point is, like, they're both really powerful in their own ways. And I think we'll see once Saturn leaves Aquarius, in about 8 months. We'll see how. I know. Well, you're next, so you'll have lots of fun. You have so much fun, and I'll be out of my Saturn return, and I'll be able to just hand the torch to all my Saturn and Pisces friends. But point being is, I think Aquarius has a lot to do. We didn't really touch on this yet, but Aquarius, in relation to it being the 11th house ruler, and that sort of, you know, the gains from the career, the network from the career, the hopes and aspirations, the friendships, the alliances. Like, there's a lot of that that I think is a lot of talking points in itself. I love Aquarius, obviously, and I love Libra as well. I love Saturn and Libra. I think it's a great energy to be in.
Is your what's the ruler of your 11th? Is it do we have the same? Do we have Scorpio? Yeah, we got the same house.
Yeah, we're the same one. Yeah, Scorpio was my 11th, and that's the one other thing. Your 11th house ruler shows a lot of like its own stuff too. And your North Node is in your 11th house, right? Or is it in your... Yeah, but by a full sign, it's in your 11th, right?
Pluto by 2 degrees, so...
Hey! I love that for you. That's awesome. That's, like, insanely powerful.
You
I see why you're into EA. I see why you're doing EA. Yeah. It's... With the North Node being in... Because there's some other stuff I wanted to kind of get on with this. Because the North Node being in 11th house, I don't know if you know this. You might know this. Not a lot of people know this because it's more of a Vedic approach, but the North Node is technically like at home or exalted. I think it's exalted more so as the terminology, but exalted in Aquarius, where the South Node is exalted in Scorpio. And it's like it's a Vedic approach thing. But the reason why I bring it up is because the North Node being in the 11th house for you is kind of a similar thing, where it's like, what is new? What can I do that's innovative, right? North Node and Rahu kind of brings out this like Aquarian energy of like this new thing that doesn't make sense, because the North Node is really, really weird, and it's going to make things really strange and odd. And you think of eclipses, and those are really cosmically random things that we can't understand at the time. And it has these correlations to Aquarius energy and 11th house energy. And I think it's something that Aquarius archetype people can recognize, that there's this sort of eclipse-like energy they're kind of born under, being an Aquarius in general, or having Aquarius placements, because there's that North Node Rahu sort of in Vedic astrology that really pulls you into different stuff. So it's a lot of multifaceted stuff with
I like it. I mean, it's like it's I'm vibing with it as you're talking. I'm like, no, like that makes sense. Yeah. I feel my North Node Pluto, very like right now I'm in my North Node. Right now I'm working with my North Node right now. This is so like you have, and I've got Pluto, and it's like those energies are very profound. It's not like we've got, you know, like a personal planet, you know, conjunction, which is like very prominent in its own ways too. But we've got like transits on our North Node, so it's like we're trying to influence or connect to like a greater meaning. You know, it's not like stuff. Yeah.
And Aquarius and Uranus kind of rule. Well, more so Aquarius rules like the collective consciousness, and then Scorpio rules like the collective shadow. So there's a lot of things with that where I mean, I don't want to go into Scorpio stuff because that's not what we're talking about. But we're just casually like dipping our toes in that Scorpio stuff. But with the collective consciousness, I think that's why you see Aquarius ruled by trends and ruled by things that are able to connect people and virality and the internet and all of these different things, because it rules something that's in connection with the higher mind, with the hive mind, I guess, or the group think, right? There's a lot of that, of how to like society move. How does, like, what is the trend? What is going on? Where is this going? What's the trajectory? And that's why Aquarius rules those trends. And that's why it's hard when people have Aquarius placements, because they're like, if they're not trendy or they're not whatever, then they're rejected, right? Or if they're not in touch with the trends, or they're not able to keep in that, and I guess my Saturn and Aquarius talking more so, but if you're not able to stay in a line with what's present and where things are going, you're gonna fall short as an Aquarius placement. And so it's something that I've had to deal with a lot, but it's being accepted for who you are that I think is really, really beautiful with Uranus and Aquarius energy.
Yeah, I've noticed with myself, like sometimes I'll get on a bandwagon that no one's on. I'm all in on that and no one sees it. Like specifically with sports. So like I'm a huge baseball fan, and I'll pick certain players. I'm like, they're gonna have really big years and nobody sees it. And then they become MVPs or like all-star, whatever. And then like everyone jumps on the bandwagon, and then I'm like, oh my God, I have to get off the bandwagon, because even though I started it, it's like it's congregated with all these new, people, and I don't want to be. It's not cool anymore, because it was cool when nobody was looking
knew about it. Yep.
And now it's like,
it was cool when it wasn't popular. Yeah, I get that. Trust me, I get that. Especially with astrology, I feel that way with astrology too. And Aquarius obviously with astrology, but there's a lot of that and that's a whole talking point in itself. I'm not going to open up the box of the astrology community, but it's something that.
Do you want feathers on the Aquarian episode? Would you like to ruffle some feathers?
No, absolutely not. No. Scorpio 11th house? Never. Let's not feed into that. No. It's just something that, for the most part, I'm grateful for it being a trend, obviously. But I think there needs to be, and I think this is with any sort of, with just the internet in general, not just with astrology, but of course Aquarius rules astrology. And I think there needs to be some sort of regulation or vetting or some sort of more boundaries put around it. Even with technology, right? We can sit in front of our phones for 36 hours a day and just melt from all of the dopamine. And it's so, there needs to be some limits with that Aquarius energy. And I've recognized that with Saturn in Aquarius, having limits of how far I go mentally, or how much I use technology for, or how much I connect to people, or how much I give myself to people, or show myself, right? That Aquarius part, it's like there needs to be some limits. There needs to be some Saturn in that. And that's kind of where, once again, that's my Saturn Aquarius talking, but it's like there needs to be some sort of limits or regulation or some sort of boundaries put around this, because technology, astrology, cosmic things like this, we've never been in a world where we've had this before. We've never been in a part of our human race where we've understood how to work with technology. We don't know how to have technological boundaries, because we've never had these devices in our hand that can literally do anything we want. And it's only going to get further, right? The way that technology and the trajectory it's going is only going to get bigger. So those boundaries need to be implemented on an individual level or as a societal level to be able to get us to get to where we're supposed to get to healthily, and not just lose ourselves to technology or whatever, or media or astrology or whatever it may be. So that was my little rant. So
it's funny because so the generation after us is Uranus and the Uranus and Aquarius generation, and it's like, so we're coming from Uranus and Aquarius, right? I mean, I have that. Obviously, you have that too.
I have Uranus. You mean Uranus and
Uranus,
Capricorn? Yeah.
did I said Uranus and
Yeah, you did, but you're fine. I know what you meant. You're good.
you know, after us is Uranus and Aquarius, and it's kind of like I question, like, you just gonna like go without restriction. So like I that's the appreciation for Capricorn and Saturn, just like the essence of the restriction is the we all need red lights. All right. So we all need the red light. If it was just the highway all the time, nobody would stop.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we need to get off the highway sometimes. We need like red lights at, to stop and reflect and okay, like let's not go full speed ahead all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Like I like what you see. See now I'm appreciating the Saturn and Aquarius. Now I'm appreciating it because,
yeah, and it's something that with Uranus and Aquarius, they're obviously it's traditionally or modernly kind of ruling each other. But even in Aquarius, there is still that traditional rulership of Saturn there. And I think with Uranus and Aquarius, that generation, they've seen a lot of social stuff and they literally lived on social media, grew up on social media, all of that stuff. And it's something that when they go through, and a lot of them I find a lot of them have, a lot of my clients are Uranus and Gemini for the most part. I've seen it across the board, but most of them are Uranus and Gemini or Uranus and Taurus. And what I find with that generation, with Uranus and Aquarius, is they find so much of their individuality in social media, and it's so amazing because they're able to really forge their own path in the digital space. But it's those limits that need to be kind of implemented because, and that's where Saturn comes in. That's where their own individual Saturn comes in, right? Saturn in Taurus is like, okay, how am I actually like what am I actually doing for this? What am I actually like helping this with? Like, what value am I providing that's not just part of the group and part of the trend? And then Saturn and Gemini, that's even its own thing where it's like they're trying to really communicate their own specific truth and understand their power of their own words. And it's an own thing. But the point is, Uranus and Saturn always work together in the chart. And I think the Uranus Aquarius generation is going to get hit pretty hard. I mean, they're getting hit now because Saturn's going over their Uranus, so they're being forced to kind of limit. And I think once Saturn moves out of Aquarius, we'll have a much better idea of where we're going technologically. And I think we'll be implementing some more boundaries on technology because it's been the wild, wild west in the internet lately.
True. That's a whole nother talk we can have. You know what I mean? Like that in itself, that's like a whole nother like hour, 2 hour, like so. Mm-hmm. I'm gonna like hush up right there because I'm.
I know we're getting into I know, into the shaking shit up kind of energy. No, I know, I get it.
I did want to talk about the dissociation of Aquarius.
Sure, fuck yeah.
Yeah, so we use the word detach a lot with Aquarius, but I think it's overused. I overuse it. I got to catch myself with it. The detachment, I use it specifically for Aquarius. Like I don't use that term for other signs. But dissociation, that's a deeper form of detachment. You know what I mean? Like detachment kind of like temporary. Dissociate kind of like it's more personal. It's kind of like you're pulling your being out of something. Like I'm no longer I'm not associated with that. I'm not associated with you. It's not detachment, but you're familiar with it because the whole the trauma signature of Aquarius, right? And so I can kind of like talk to you about that. I was thinking like when things get too traumatic for Aquarius, they dissociate or the sign dissociates. So you get this will escape in its various ways. Aquarius being a air sign, like a sign ruled by the mind, it's like whoop, like like you no longer exist. I no longer like I'm gone. It's So now we're talking about the darker side of Aquarius. We just jumped into the darker side, but let's talk about it.
It's not dark for me. You're fine. I've lived in a dissociative state for most of my life just because of the trauma. you know, that Uranus kind of provides and pushes you through. A lot of the things I've said with being such an Aquarian individual is my mind has always been my safe space. And that is beneficial for a lot of reasons, because my mentality has now been this really strong, you know, higher octave of Mercury, Uranian thing. But it's also been something that, much like you said, like when I feel traumatized or when I feel, you know, triggered even, I will escape in my head, and I will kind of go and explore it mentally. And this is more of an Aquarius Moon thing too. Like I'll go explore it mentally, and then I'll come back and be like, okay, well that didn't make sense, X, Y, and Z or whatever. And I think part of the dissociation also comes from that natural in conjunct that I keep talking about with Aquarius and Cancer, right? With that Aquarius Moon energy, we both have that, where it's like we don't feel safe, right? And because dissociation comes from trauma and not feeling safe in your body, safe in your environment. So you go into your mind, your mental. And so that has a lot to do with, you know, pretty much the Cancer portion, because Cancer has to do with like the moon, the body, and the connection to like being here. Also Aries as well, but it's its own thing. And so it's a lot of like, I don't feel safe in my body. I don't feel safe here. So I need to dissociate so I can understand what happened. So I can mentally feel that there's a sense of distance between me and this problem, so that I can I don't lose myself or I don't break myself further, right? And that it's a matter of finding that safe space with Aquarius energy, with that dissociation. I think that's why dissociation, I mean, it's a natural psychological response to protect our brains from trauma and from issues. And so, and from dysregulation of our nervous system. So there's that part too. And so I think dissociation it's not healthy. Like you shouldn't like lean into it, but it's natural in the way that we kind of are able to survive or grow as humans. So yeah, that's what I really feel like saying on that.
Yeah, it's a double-edged sword. Like, I'm just like staying, because again, like, you don't have to be Aquarius to like dissociate. You know what I mean? Like anyone can dissociate, but like kind of staying Aquarius, I'm like, I would say that that's a sign that's more inclined to dissociate. Like,
Yeah.
you know, like there's maybe, I think that is the sign. Like, so there's this guy. I just like learned about this guy. I didn't know about him. I forgot his name. Mulligan, something Mulligan. It's on Netflix. The 24 whatever Mulligan, but basically he was traumatized as a youth in this thing, and then like he became like a murderer and a rapist, and he apparently, like, they found out he had DID, associative identity disorder. He had 24 different authors.
Yeah.
Listening to his story, I'm like, oh yeah, that sounds legit. People were thinking he was faking. I was like, I don't think he's faking, because his story lines up to the dissociation aspect of him just breaking mentally. And then I looked up the chart, and sure enough, Aquarius Sun, Aquarius Mercury. I'm like, oh yeah, okay. You know, but it's just crazy. It's just crazy how like it sometimes adds up that way, where you're like, oh yeah, the Aquarius is really shining through. Well, not shining. The darkness of Aquarius is coming.
Yeah, and that's because, you know, Aquarius is much like anything else. There is still that Saturn thing, so it's trying to make sense of it. It's trying to understand it. But Aquarius is so different and so beyond our mental understanding. Kind of in the example I said earlier about the whole homeless person like cat. You know, like this, like the whole dissociative identity disorder. That is something that is getting more, you know, talked about, and people, like you said, they respond in a way they're like, that doesn't make any sense, that's fucking crazy, that's weird. But it does make sense when you can view things in the sense of trauma, in the sense of protection of the psyche and protection of those things. And it's hard because I don't think people reject Aquarius energy quite quickly. And yes, there is probably a dissociative sort of bend to things. There's with Aquarius, but at the end of the day, we're doing those things because we're trying to regulate our nervous system. We're trying to feel safe. We're trying to understand how we can go through those things and navigate our world of this craziness that we're living in, where we're like completely overstimulated by information every day, you know, and we're being pulled in all these different directions. Our focus is going all these different directions, and of course we're gonna break. We're gonna fractal. We're gonna lose ourselves, and it's a matter of being very. It's a matter of keeping that form and kind of making sense of it as you go, and it's hard because Aquarius also rules that individual, like you and your story. So like you, like someone may have dissociative identity disorder, someone may have multiple personality disorder, someone may have, you know, bipolar, someone may have schizophrenia, like, and those are all different labels. Once again, the whole Aquarius label shit. You know, so it's a matter of figuring out who you are with Aquarius energy and what your placement is, and that does seem like someone that is trying to figure that out, because Aquarius, it came in to kind of break shit and break the person up, you know?
Yeah.
So, and I think it's dark, but at the end of the day, I once again, I love the darkness, so I don't mind it.
Yeah. I'm all in it. Like, seriously,
Yeah.
way too many. I was visiting my grandma a few weeks ago, and then she was like checking out all the charts that I do, you know, for homework and stuff, and just like doing research, like just astro research and doing different charts. She said, you know, you should really separate your serial killers from all the rest of your charts.
Really?
Well, because she does Reiki, and she's a spiritual healer, and you know, like I just kind of come from that lineage, and
Mm-hmm.
she was like, yeah, because like those are their energy is like they're in the energy of the other charts.
Yeah.
That they have. And she's like, you need like a special folder for them because their energy is far more intense and dark. And so now I gotta get to separate my charts.
And those are that's more your Saturn in Pisces, but it's also Saturn in Aquarius too, because that's a lot of the having to have mental understand the boundaries, understand that the energy can be fractal like that. But that's more on the Saturn in Pisces side of your chart than Saturn in Aquarius. Personally, is what I would feel. But I think at the end of the day, it is important to have those boundaries and understand that there's more mentally going on than we know or we're capable to understand. And once again, I feel like that's more Saturn in Pisces than Saturn in Aquarius, but it's still applicable to the story.
But yeah, energy, just the energy in general of like working with energy and having that, like Saturn and Pisces, I have that. And it's like boundaries, like and separating like the energy Pisces and like the spiritual energy, and like so, you know, and Saturn and Pisces, I'm like still trying to understand what this is like internally. But like, what is this about?
I can't wait. I cannot wait for Saturn to be in Pisces, bro. I can't wait. And there's so much to talk about with that. I have so much to say on Saturn and Pisces, but that's not what this is about. But yeah, Saturn and Pisces is gonna be fun. I'm very excited.
I think we're gonna get what the hippie era is gonna like. We're gonna have a part 2 of the hippie era.
Mm-hmm.
I'm betting. I guarantee you, like it's gonna be drugs and alcohol and prohibition.
There's going to be a lot. There's going to be a lot of things with Saturn and Pisces. The one thing I always tell every Saturn and Pisces client I have is just pretty much becoming your own like spiritual authority. Yeah. It's a lot where it's going. I mean, there's much more to it, obviously, that if we wanted to break that down, we could. But for the most part, with this staying on trend of the Aquarius stuff, it's something that once we understand it, and I think that's the thing that's why it's really helpful, because I found, and I don't know if this is true for you or not, but I found a lot of Saturn and Pisces people that just got into astrology or tarot during Saturn being in Aquarius. And because of that, I think that's what's caused them to be like, okay, I understand this a little bit more. I understand the mental, right? I understand the mental, where I fit, right? What my story is, because there is a key to to astrology while Saturn's in Aquarius to understand us better, right? Understand our way to relate better, right? Aquarius, Saturn, it has to do with also like, you know, boundaries socially and understand how to relate to people and understand where they fit and who they are. And that's where like love languages and like, you know, sexual identity or their attachment style or their astrology chart, their human design chart, whatever. Aquarius wants to be able to break someone apart, but then also put them back together. You know, it wants to say like dissect them and be like, okay, cool, I've broken you into 12,000 pieces. Now let me put you back together so that I make a cohesive version of you.
Sounds like a really messed up horror movie.
It does, yeah, exactly. That's how my brain works. And it's every day I like break, but that's also my Jupiter and Virgo too. It's a whole thing. But point is like Yeah, ooh, I know. But it breaks it down. And Aquarius energy needs to have some sense of form to it and put it back together. Because if you just break yourself and keep breaking yourself as an Aquarius or
Like,
anything, you're not going anywhere. Or you're going to be that person that's just like, oh, I'm like a trans liberal cis blah 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 blah. Although, and that's fine. Like, I'm not saying anything against any of those labels, but there's people that label themselves so much that who are you then? What
yeah,
what are you besides those labels?
congealed. Everything is just kind of da 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 da. It's like, where is the Saturn? Like, where's the
Mm-hmm.
cohesiveness?
Yeah,
That we're,
exactly.
it's
Exactly.
like, and being a Pisces too, it's like, oh, it's nice to talk about these like higher realms and 5D consciousness and all that stuff, but like ultimately we're for a reason. You know what I mean? It's like, and that's the I like Aquarius because it's the in between it's in between Capricorn and Pisces. Like Capricorn is like like the hard concrete world, and then Pisces is like no earth. You know what I mean? And it's like Aquarius falls right in between, and it's like we can kind of make sense with having both. So
And I think part of it too that I think, and this is something I like to, once again, Aquarius stuff, I like to twist it.
yeah,
But when you think of Aquarius, technically it is like the 12th house of Pisces. So when you think of it that way, it's kind of like this own like higher self, quote unquote, of Pisces, and that's why Aquariuses are very different, and they kind of work in their own mental time. And so when you twist it that way, or you make it second to Capricorn, that's its own thing, right? So you can interpret it that way, and that's what my Uranian ass does all the time. I'll like twist the chart around, and I'm like, okay, well, Aquarius is also second to, it's second to Capricorn, it's third to Sag, right? So there's so many different ways to interpret that. And I think with it being at least the in between Capricorn and Pisces, as you said, I think there's part of that has a lot to do with sustaining what you made in Capricorn, your image, your career, what you've built, right? Sustaining that, and then seeing, okay, what is the spiritual purpose for this? What is the esoteric reason for this, right? That there's that sustaining of Aquarius that then leads to Pisces, where we kind of pivot between, okay, I've accomplished a lot, I've given back in the Aquarian sense, and now it's like now I have to go back to myself and meet myself in my own soul essentially, and be like, this is who I am and this is why I came here, and then reincarnate, and then you got Aries,
yeah.
So yeah, it's a really really Aquarius is beautiful. I absolutely love Aquarius energy. I could say it all day. I love it.
I don't really care. Like, yes, I do have signs. Yes, yes, I am an astrologer and I have favorite signs. Aquarius is my top three favorite sign. So
Mm-hmm.
yes, it's just so misunderstood. It's such a
Yeah.
mis sign, especially within the astrology community. Like people can't decide. Like people can't like come to terms with the. Yeah, I love it. I mean, that's Aquarius. It's like
Mm-hmm.
people are arguing over me. Like people don't get me. And it's like,
Yep.
yeah, it's funny. Astrologers like, and you've seen it. I'm sure you've seen it just as much as I, in terms of like, even like the headlining astrologers of the previous eras. They're like describing Aquarius this way, and then the other ones are describing it this way, and it's just like, wait a second, that is like completely opposing. Like you're teaching me that, and then they're teaching me that,
Yep.
and then it's like, what is Aquarius? And
Yep.
Aquarius is like shaking its head, like none of you fuckers get me at all.
Yep. And that's and that can be attributed to Aquarius being the sense of alliances too, and also being an air sign. So it has to do with like your mental alliance too, and who you're mentally like vibrating with, the sense of vibration. And then also the third house from Sag, which is, its own sort of, that's its own thing. So I think it is hard because people, when it comes to Aquarius, they don't understand it. Hell, I have Uranus so heavy in my chart, and Aquarius so heavy in my chart, that like I still don't understand Aquarius even with my Saturn return. And it's something that I think as we all progress, because once again, like we said, Aquarius works on its own time frame. It works outside of the confines of our time. It works from the future. And when it works from the future, we're not going to make fucking sense of it. We're not going to understand what, what it is. And that's why Aquarius has to be rejected until its time comes and it becomes the norm. Aquarius will become the norm because Uranus eventually becomes Saturn, right? Feminist sort of movements become the norm, or whatever different rights that we fight for, Uranian things that are different, right? Gender inequality or LGBT rights. They then become the norm, right? They then become Saturn. So Uranus eventually becomes Saturn. It just takes time, but we don't know how long because it's Uranus and we don't, it's we don't know.
It just blends eventually.
Exactly.
And thinking about just really quickly, before we wrap up, thinking of I'm a huge baseball fan again, so I'm thinking of Jackie Robinson and back in the day and how it was oh, you're the first black baseball player and this and that, that was super Uranian, right? And it's 2022. Then we look back and it's damn, that was such a long time ago. You know what I mean?
Uh-huh.
It's back then it was Uranian. Now it's kind of, that was so long ago. Yeah, it's still Uranian, but it's that was a long time ago. So it's the blend between Saturn and Uranus is wrapped up and but I love Aquarius because it's forever. It's even such a long time ago. It's always revolutionary.
Yep, always. It's a trendsetter. It's a trendsetter.
Yeah, up until people started everyone, the trend becomes the norm, like you're saying, and then it's Saturn ultimately tries to triumph over.
Oh yeah, of course. Saturn of course tries to pull things back and tries to say no, let's go back to 1920, and it's what the fuck,
Yeah.
So it's hard with Aquarius energy, and I think it's something that we all learn how to be different and be our own person and set our own trends and be our own individuals, and it's something we're all learning with Saturn and Aquarius. And I think I'm really grateful to be able to sit here and talk with you about this, and so I really, 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 really appreciate you bringing me on here and everyone else that you brought on. It's super fun. And yeah, I love talking about Aquarius with you. So thank you a lot. Yeah.
See, Aquarius is a sign I can just get drunk to and just a rage about all the Aquarius stuff that is not Aquarius yet. It's we're in 2022 and we're still here, and it's that's my moon and Mercury, and then the Uranus and Neptune conjunction. And I'm just why are we not in flying cars and shit? Just all that stuff.
Oh yeah, I know. I'm well aware of that, and it's because we're pulling on the Saturn more. We're pulling on what we know, and the boomers and those generations of people, or 70-year-old people running the government. All that, it's fine, whatever.
Yeah, they're still running it, and it's I don't know. I'm gonna say it. It's jokingly, so no one takes this why'd you say that? It's jokingly. I'm they're still alive. Yeah, it's they're hanging on still, and it's the Leo generations. I'm talking about the evil people. They're still alive. They're still in control, and eventually they're gonna die off. Again, I'm not being super serious about this. I'm quote unquote, but it's when is the next generation gonna take the reins? You know what I mean? The Aquarian generation. When are they gonna take the Pluto and Scorpio generation? When are they gonna take the reins? You know what I mean? It's only a matter of time, but it's the Leo generation, the Pluto and Leo, that they're still here, and they're I'm not letting go of my control. I will my control. My control.
And I think a lot of that will happen once Pluto goes into Aquarius, Uranus goes into Gemini. I think that'll be a lot of those specific key points of that, because then they'll have the Pluto opposition, and that'll be its own thing.
You have a Pluto opposition?
No, I'm saying no. I'm saying when Pluto goes into Aquarius, it'll be a Pluto opposition for the Pluto and Leo generation.
Oh yes. Oh God.
That's what I was saying.
Oh God, yes.
That's when I think, in regards to timing, that's when I think that may happen, or what you're kind of hinting at may happen. When they won't be able to keep up, because Pluto and Aquarius and Uranus and Gemini are going to be zipping things faster than we can even.
Right. And they're I can't keep up with this. I'm too old.
Yeah. So, it's going to be fun. It's a fun ride. I'm excited.
Wait, awesome. Yeah, 2023 is going to be the new millennium. because everything just jumps into something else, or you know what I mean.
Have fun! Can't wait to see it. Can't wait to be here and watch my Saturn and Pisces friends.
All you're not.
It.
I've got other Saturn and Aquarius friends, and they're like all at the same time, like all within the last 3 weeks. They're like, "Oh, you're gonna have your Saturn return next year. Let me tell you about mine." I'm like,
yeah.
Okay, like I'm not afraid. I'm ruled by Saturn. I am not afraid. You know what I mean?
And I need to tell you, as a fellow Capricorn rising, I'm gonna tell you it's gonna hit you in a way that like is very different than other Saturn people because you're ruled by it. So it's gonna be its own thing, and we can talk about that privately if you want. But point is like it's gonna be big for you because you're ruled by Capricorn, and also you have all those Aquarius placements too. So it's going to be a little fun, and you have a mutual reception with Saturn and Neptune, so that's helping it out a lot. So
yes. So yeah. Like we at this point, it's like we're gonna like jump into like some like stuff we can talk on the side. So like
read it, just a live reading of your chart instead of the actual Aquarius reading. It's fine. Aquarius works in its own time. It's fine.
Yeah. So no, this. Great, we covered like I love this too. Like every episode, like we're covering so much stuff. Like I can't wait to have a just a completion of like this series, and then like like anyone that's just interested in learning astrology, and they're like I don't know too much, and they just stumble upon my page or your page or any of like the co-host's page, and they're like, damn, like. That's like a whole book of stuff that we kind of talked about, and just in one conversation. So no, I'm just grateful to have you on, and like this was amazing, and yeah, one of many conversations.
Oh yeah, we'll be talking much more. So I'll message you after this. We can talk more, obviously. But thanks again. I appreciate you.
Wait, thanks again, and thanks for everyone for tuning in, and anyone that's gonna watch it later. Hope you enjoyed it. We enjoyed it. So. Yes, sweet. All right.